Okay, so the last sign in the zodiac is the sign Pisces. And today I want to talk about those of you who were born with the moon in Pisces or the moon in the 12th house. And the reason why I want to talk about this today is because I found some really interesting things about people with the moon in the 12th house. Just from doing charts, I've noticed, I've observed like a pattern of behavior with 12th house moon people, which just is interesting to me because that's a lot of what astrology is it is like learning a different language, but you're also kind of like, because you research so much, you see patterns. And it just gets complicated, but it's super interesting. So in modern astrology, Pisces is ruled by the sign Neptune. And as most of you guys know by this point, Neptune has kind of a nebulous little flavor to it. It rules things. It's similar to in the East, if you can think about Rahu, how Rahu always has that smoke screen over it, you know, the head of the dragon. Neptune is kind of, and Rahu, by the way, governs fame a lot of times over in the East. And Neptune kind of has something to do with fame too, because it rules Hollywood. It rules what you see is not always what you get. It rules escapism. It rules film. It rules any kind of substances, poisons, you know, anything with the ocean, with the sea, drugs, alcohol, any addiction, gambling, any addiction. It could be addiction to shopping or food or whatever. It's very Neptune. It's where we escape, and that's what the 12th house is. It's where we escape. So for those of you who have a moon in the 12th house, this doesn't necessarily mean that you're an escapist by nature, but I have seen this, and I know a lot of times people are like, oh, I don't drink and I don't use drugs and I don't, even shop that much. But I've seen people with this moon placement like sit around and watch TV all day. And, like I said, TV, that's all like Hollywood-y, you know what I mean? And that's their escape. That's what they do. So this placement, because it's ruled by, modern Neptune, gives that tendency towards escape. But the real ruler from back in the day, and when I do a chart, I look at both. I can't like just pretend like that didn't exist. The old rulerships is Jupiter, and Jupiter also rules Sagittarius. So when I do somebody's chart and I see, like, let's say I do see a moon in Pisces, I'm going to not only look at where Neptune is placed, but because I'm going to look at Jupiter. And both of those are outer planets. I understand that, but I do want to kind of focus in on where they are and what they're aspecting, because that helps me look at the entire chart in its entirety. So both of those planets are important. Jupiter is expansive. So if we have a Jupiter transit, a lot of times over our first house, we got to watch our weight more, because Jupiter grows things. It makes things big. And you know why? Because it doesn't have strong boundaries. That's the thing with Jupiter. With Saturn, the opposite, it's very, very structured. It's very much about discipline. And I always say Saturn gets the worst rap, but Saturn I really like, because it gives you the self-will to accomplish goals, no matter what they are. Like we need structure. We need to create our own structure. Maybe it's not somebody else's structure, but we need to create our own, and that's all Saturn. So when you think about the sign Pisces, you're thinking about two different things. There's a lack of boundaries going on. And there's also, because of the expansiveness of Jupiter, there's a need to kind of escape from the world. And that's very true with the 12th house. The 12th house is where we escape from the world. So, and it's not always this terrible negative thing. Now, I've known people that you would say have addictive personalities, but they become like wildly successful and whatever, because they put their addictive energy into something positive, or they're like in super duper good shape. We've all seen those people because they put it into something constructive and positive. And that's kind of a free will thing. Your chart is your chart, but you always have free will. Keeping in mind always the West, which I'm talking about today, is more psychological. The East is more predictive. So I look at the Western chart more to see the personality, but I do look at the East to see some of the personality too. I can't lie and say I don't. So this moon has now on the positive, these are going to be highly sensitive people, highly sensitive. And I mean it in an intuitive way. And I also mean it in a compassionate way. On the negative, And I've talked about this before with this sign, they can do like a doormat kind of a vibe, you know, that they always have to watch out for. And I'm not saying like, okay, like be aggressive and mean, but you got to have boundaries or else people walk on you. Trust me, they do. You got to develop, if you don't have them naturally, really strong boundaries. Now, the interesting thing about, you know, boundaries is intuitive people, psychic people naturally don't have good boundaries. And that's why they're able to pick up on strangers' things. So like, I'm sure many of you do, you walk into a room and you are just not liking the vibe, right? You know, so you walk out of the room. There's something about it you don't like. That's very Neptunian. That's just like a subtle, Uranus is just like, ooh, boom, there's the thought, there's the flash. Neptune is just kind of like, I don't like this vibe. I don't like this person. There's something rubbing me the wrong way. And I say always follow that intuition. I am not saying, but where the boundaries come in is knowing when to cut people off, when to cut situations off, when to say this is not working for me anymore, and this is not, you know, helping me to be the best person that I can be in my highest. So that's why they kind of end up being doormats. Another thing, I'm just gonna be honest with you guys, one thing that I can't deal with is not all, and I'm not saying this about everybody, but one of their negative traits is they copy. Like, I knew some, and I'm not talking about the sun in Pisces. I'm not talking about Pisces rising. I'm talking in particular about the moon in Pisces. It's like, I'll say something and then they like repeat it as if like they had said it first, and they're like, do you get it? I'm like, I get it because I just said it 20 seconds before you said it, so I totally get it. So, and I noticed that it's like they mimic, and I don't know if this is a people-pleasing thing or just they're not thinking quick and they're just not thinking on their own quick, but I can tell you that it's super annoying. It's one of their more annoying traits. But on the positive, their compassion, I think, you know, when used correctly, that Neptune Pisces energy is great. You know, I think it's a really good thing. Of course, you have to look at the entire chart. But what I want to talk about with the moon in the 12th house, and this is so interesting because I've seen this with so many people, is that if somebody has the moon in the 12th house, in relationships, they hide their feelings. They don't really, and now the 12th house is all that's hidden, you know, sometimes even from us. They, for some reason, have, I guess, maybe a fear or vulnerability or something, but they totally hide their feelings. And, you know, I always say, watch out for 12th house people because it's not smart to underestimate them, especially if there's something like Mars in the 12th house. And it's really not a good idea because they might be quiet on the surface, but they're explosive underneath. The 12th house is the subconscious mind, what's hidden. But these people in particular, I think, and it might, you know, so much of astrology is what happened when we were younger, and it kind of colors our personalities. These people really, truly, I think they feel very vulnerable. And this is why a lot of times you kind of see them just go into their own little cocoon or something, kind of like a Cancer. You know, the water signs are like that. They're highly sensitive, and water houses are like that, the 4th house to 8th house to 12th house. So, you know, it's almost like they can't take too much stimulus or whatever. But in romantic relationships with clients I've looked at the other person when I do this industry, and I'm like, okay, there's a, you know, and Venus is the same gig. If Venus isn't, they do the same thing. Venus in the 12th or the moon in the 12th, they hide stuff. I personally think it's because something happened with one of the parents, and one of the parents wasn't as demonstrative or something like that. But then again, I'm no Sigmund Freud, I'm no psychologist, so I don't know, but that's just a lot of times what I equate that to, because again, when we look at the natal chart, we're also looking at early life situations, whatever that later color us. So, but all in all, the moon in Pisces, you know, the positive stuff is the sensitivity, is a spiritual placement. It can be very spiritual, but just be careful not becoming like dogmatic and turning people away from spirituality and God, because I've seen people do that too. You know, never get that holier than thou kind of attitude, because it really kind of does the opposite effect for people around you. But creatively, I think they can be phenomenal, but they do want to watch out for lack of boundaries and mimicking. And, you know, it's sometimes they can be like totally, because it's kind of like a floaty, like I said, nebulous kind of a thing. And it's like, I'll go with the flow. It's not like, you know, somebody with a strong Uranus or something, or Mars, where they're like, no, I'm gonna do it my way. I'm my own person. They just kind of, the sign can kind of go more with the flow. But they got good, they got bad, just like everybody else. And so this is the last moon sign. I'm going to keep doing something. We're doing something else, astrology related, hopefully this week. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.